This video is made possible by Practical Defense Systems, the best online security training at the lowest prices. You can start your security career today online at pdsclasses.com. Check them out. Hi, I'm Joel Persinger. I'm the Gun Guy. Thank you very much for all of your support of GunGuyTV and everything that you do to help me keep this effort going. I'm very grateful for everything that you do, so please don't stop doing it. In fact, if you'd like to support GunGuyTV and not cost yourself one red penny, all you have to do is use our Amazon link when you shop Amazon. And it doesn't matter what you buy. You could buy toothpaste or toilet paper or gun stuff. We're going to get a small marketing fee, and it costs you absolutely nothing. So there's a way for you to help us out and pick Amazon's pocket to keep GunGuyTV going. Here's how you do that. You go to our website at GunGuy.tv. And on the top of the website, you'll find a little banner. I've circled it for you so that you can see it here. What you do is click on that banner. That will take you to Amazon through our affiliate link. And then if you bookmark that Amazon page and then go back to that bookmark every time you buy something from Amazon, what happens is Amazon will pay us a little marketing fee because you're basically making your purchases through our affiliate link. As I said, it costs you absolutely nothing, but it does help out quite a bit. And believe it or not, it actually produces a little bit of money that we can use to buy ammunition or pay for fuel to go to the range or buy equipment or whatever else that we need to do. So there's a way for you to support us that costs you nothing. All right, I got together with Sam Paredes from Gun Owners of California. Everybody loves Sam. I know I certainly do. He is an incredible fighter for the Second Amendment in the state of California. Now, people might say, well, he's not doing a very good job because you're losing all your rights there. No, what you don't understand is if it wasn't for guys like Sam Paredes, we would have lost all of our rights instead of just some of them. That man fights diligently and continually for our rights here in California. And he is with the Gun Owners of California, which I'm a member. Now, Sam is going to give us an update on what's going on in California because what with COVID-19 or the Chinese virus or whatever you want to call it, and the unrest that we've had and these other things, to some degree, we've been focused on that. And while we've been focused on that, the legislature in the California area has been working on stuff behind the scenes to take away more of our rights. So Sam's going to update us on what's going on legislatively and a little bit about what's going on with the courts. So I guess at this point, I'll just shut up and say, here's the interview. Sam, one thing I can tell you, brother, is I'm going to change your name from Sam Paredes to Sam Elliott because that is the best mustache I've seen in a long time. That's a COVID-19 mustache. You've been working on that.
Yeah, I shaved off the beard and I was shaving it off and I said, you know what? I'm going to go back to my roots. You know, when I was in junior high school and I had a Fu Manchu and then it grew in a lot thicker than it did when I was a kid. And I said, you know, Pancho Villa.
All you need a sombrero and a great big bullet. Bandolero with bullets, and you need a donkey.
And a sarape under it.
Oh, yes, and you need it, but you got to have a donkey. You got to have a donkey. Without the donkey, it just doesn't work. Well, so let's now look. I've got to confess to you, Sam. I feel bad about this because we've been so busy with business has been crazy, and we've had so many things going on, and then of course with the civil unrest and COVID and like that. I have not kept abreast of what's happening in California with our crazy legislature, but I suspect very strongly that they've been sneaking around. You know, we've been watching the shiny object over here, and they've been doing nasty things to us over on the other side. So can you update us on what's happening in the legislature with California?
Sure, Joel. As always, it's an honor and a pleasure to be with you, and that's why we're here, to be able to provide that information when the time is appropriate, and I think now's the time to do just that. And you are absolutely correct. The legislature is up to its old shenanigans, and they can get away with it because they have a supermajority, and any rules that exist, they can waive. They make their own rules as to how they govern their houses, and then they have the ability to waive those rules and ignore them and do whatever the heck they want if they've got enough votes. And unfortunately, they've got enough votes. And the bill in particular that we're talking about that is affected by this most is AB 88. This is a trailer bill. It was a gun bill that made it through the assembly and went to the Senate by Assemblyman Ting. And it was a bad bill, but they took that as a vehicle wiped out all of the anti-gun language, and they dropped in what would typically be trailer bill language. Now, trailer bills are bills that have to be passed in order to be able to implement provisions of the state budget, the governor's budget. So they are essential. They are the mechanisms that allow the governor and the government to spend the money that that is called for in the budget, is passed and signed into law. And they chose in this case to include policy as opposed to just fiscal mechanisms. And they know exactly what they're doing when they do this, because these trailer bills, they don't get vetted in any committee other than the budget review committees, budget review in the Senate and the budget committee in the Assembly. And they don't deal with the policy there. They deal with the fiscal aspects of it. And so by dropping in language into this bill, they know that it won't have to go before a policy committee to have hearings, to have debate, to have discussion, any of that. And the particular language that is uniquely offensive is that the Attorney General is mad as a wet hen that guns like the Franklin Armory Formula One exist.
The Title One, yeah.
The Title One, yeah, the Title One. Mm-hmm. And that people have been legally manufacturing these types of AR platform handguns in the state of California. And actually, the state and the federal government said, well, we don't actually have a definition for that gun, because a rifle begins with a firearm that is meant to be shot from the shoulder.
Right.
That one, the Title One, does not qualify for that.
Well, the other issue is it's not a pistol because the barrel is like 18 inches long.
Yeah.
So it's not a rifle, it's not a pistol, it's not a shotgun, and it's not in any other weapon federally. So
the legislature is calling it a rifle.
Are you serious or are you kidding? Because
I am absolutely serious.
I'm got to tell you right now, I got to restrain myself, because there's at least 5 one-liners, none of which are appropriate, that went through my head when you mentioned rifle. And so, okay, you did. Please excuse me if you're watching this. Yes, sometimes things go through my head that are better left unsaid, and so were those. Yes. So there you are. Anyway, okay, so they're calling it a rifle.
Yes, a rifle. So the Attorney General says it looks too much like an assault weapon, so it needs to be defined as an assault weapon. And that's what the language does, is it defines this pistol as this firearm as a unique firearm, a rifle, and it is going to be considered an assault weapon, which means that they're going to open up for a very short period of time the ability for anybody who has one of these guns to register it as
retroactively
a assault weapon.
Retroactively. Now, in other words, they're taking people that have bought these legally, that own them legally, and making them into criminals unless they register them again.
Well, I understand that this Title One has been marketed, but I don't know that a single one of them has actually been sold in the state of California yet. They might be by now, but there are seriously people who have manufactured one from a registered lower receiver that is totally legal for them to do. And if they have one, they're going to have to register it as a California assault weapon, or else, I don't know if there's a way to make that. I'm sure there is a way to make that California compliant, or
who knows,
featureless.
So and that's come up. I actually reviewed the gun for Franklin Armory, because they send me stuff, and it's actually pretty cool. I mean, it's a little goofy because you can kind of shoulder it, but you can't. You kind of cheek it. But it actually functions really, really well, and it was an opportunity for people in California to have a fully functional AR with a shorter stock. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't have a stock, and so you didn't have to register it or any of those kind of things. And you could have your flash hider, and you could have your forward pistol grip, and that was the goal there. Mm-hmm. When I did it, I had a lot of people contact me and say, well, can I just build my own like that? And I thought, I don't know, but it sounds like folks have, and that they would otherwise perhaps be legal, except that now that the legislature wants to do something about it, they're going to end up having to register them unless they want to make them featureless rifles or go back to square one again.
Right.
Where's this bill in the process?
Well, this is the funny thing. A budget trailer bill typically has many different provisions in it that are different subject matters. And this had some funding mechanisms for youth corrections and different programs having to do with corrections and youth incarceration. And first of all, when the bill was on the Senate Budget Review Committee, there were multiple Democrats who objected to the fact that this much policy was placed into one of these budget bills, and they said they're going to vote for it, but they're going to, pinch their nose as they vote aye. And then it went to the Senate floor, and it passed and was sent to the Assembly for concurrence. So all of the amendments to the Ting bill were made in the Senate. So now it's supposed to go back to the Assembly for a concurrence vote. It's not a debate. It's not looking at the policy. It's concurrence on the amendments from the Senate.
But what does that mean exactly? I'm a little confused.
Let's do this. Bills start in either the Senate or the Assembly. They go through that house, then they go through the other house to be debated and amended and considered. And then as they're coming, once they finish with that bill, if an Assembly bill went to the Senate and it had no amendments, if the Senate voted on it, then it would go to the governor. But when it goes to the second house, if there are any amendments to it, then it has to come back to the House of Origin for a concurrence in the amendments that were made in the other house. Okay, then it would be sent to the governor's office. So that way, one house cannot, excuse me, hijack a bill from the other house, put their own language in it, pass it, and send it to the governor. It has to come back to the House of Origin for an approval of the amendments that were made in the Senate. They can't amend it. They can either vote for the concurrence or kill the bill, or what they did in this case, they did take a vote on it, but the vote was to send it back to the Senate. So now it's sitting in the Senate. You have a bunch of, and the reason that happened is that there are a lot of Assembly Democrats who hate provisions of the bill, and they want to work it out. Of course, they don't hate the gun issues in the bill. They only hate all of the other stuff that they're really focusing on, the decarceration of people, the letting people out or not
The whole
incarcerating
defund the police, don't put anybody in jail thing.
In essence, yeah. And those that are in jail or prison, it's not their fault, so we need to let them out. And
they never apply that to gun owners. They want to put us in prison. Why can't I say it's not my fault? Let me out. But they don't.
Yeah. So
anyway, I'm sorry. I digress.
Yeah, that bill is the shenanigans bill of the year, and so it's going to sit there until they return from their break. July 11th, I believe they come back, and the Senate is going to have to negotiate with the Assembly in order to come up with a bill that the Assembly will approve and vote on. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and we are the beneficiaries of a internecine war that's going on between the Democrats in the Assembly and the Senate. So that bill is kind of in limbo, sitting over in the Senate. They still have work to do on it before it comes back and before it gets sent to the governor.
There's a feeling, Sam, among gun owners in California sometimes that these things are inevitable. And sometimes I get sucked into that myself. So I guess my question is this bill inevitable, or can we still fight it?
We can still fight it. We're going to have multiple opportunities to fight it down, I believe. And it is inevitable that a bill will come out of the Senate and be sent to the Assembly because it's a implementation bill on the budget. So there are other technical machinery type language in there to implement other portions of the budget. So a budget bill will come out. What it looks like, who knows? If they choose to take out all of the policy stuff that was not vetted, and that would be a beautiful thing, because then our language would be taken out also. I don't, they're of the mindset that if it's the stuff that we really want to hate, we'll go ahead and process. The gun stuff. We'll process that. We'll figure out how to. We'll cheat. We'll lie. We'll steal to get that to the governor's desk and have him sign it. But it's this other stuff that they are being a little more circumspect about, and they are not consistent. They are not fair. They are the legislature. They, like I said, they make their own rules, and they can defy their own rules, and it's in the Constitution, and no court is going to challenge the legislature's ability to organize itself, establish its own rules, including a rule to defy the rules that they have established. So
wow,
inevitably something's going to come through, Lord willing, and the creeks don't rise. All of the policy language that's in the bill will be stricken, but there's not, I'm not holding out a whole lot of hope, because they hate us so much.
Which brings up a question, Sam, and maybe I'm asking a question that is idiotic, I don't know, but we have so many new gun owners in the state. We have across the country, there's a bazillion of them as a result of COVID and the Chinese virus, or whatever you want to call it, and the civil unrest that we've experienced. It's just gun sales have gone through the roof. Do these politicians in the state legislature take that into consideration, that they may be angering people who used to support them but may not now, because they're tinkering even further with their gun? The reason I asked the question is because I run into all these people who are so stunned because they voted these people in, but now they're so stunned that it takes them 10 days. They have to wait 10 days to get a gun. They're so stunned that the process to be able to buy a gun is so hard. They're so shocked that there's so few pistols and revolvers available to purchase, and that the list is quite short. And they're so shocked. I ran into a guy who was so shocked that his AR-15 couldn't be functional like AR-15s around the country. So I think a lot of these folks who voted for this garbage are so ill-informed that now they're becoming informed. Are these politicians the least bit concerned about losing voters over this stuff?
There are two answers to that question. The politicians are looking at this and the number of guns that are being sold in the state of California and nationwide and saying, oh my word, this is terrible. We have to fast track more gun control now that all of these, new gun owners who have no training and are going to shoot themselves in the foot and are going to have accidents and are going to use guns without knowledge of what the laws of use of deadly force are, and that's what they're thinking now. The other part of that question is that yes, there is a huge awakening amongst the voting public, and this is anecdotal, but it is universal. Every gun store that I've talked to is having a record day virtually every day of the week since COVID started, and then since the unrest started, it was amped up significantly. Stores that used to sell 4 or 5 guns a day are selling 40 or 50 guns a day. Stores that used to sell 80 or 100 guns a day are selling 300 and 400 guns a day, or they're taking orders for those because they have blown through much of their inventory. The popular things are semi-automatic pistols, revolvers, and pump shotguns. Those are very popular, but there is a huge amount of the public that's saying, I need a gun, I need any gun. I'll take that, what is that, 6.5 by 55 Creedmoor or Maury, and with a scope on it. I need one of those, and it's a wonderful thing. And what they are saying is, you tell a kid don't touch the fire, and it isn't until they touch the fire and they get burned that they really learn the lesson, unfortunately. And a lot of these people going through the process of waiting for hours in line in order to buy a gun, and then they realize that they have to wait 10 days before they can pick up the gun. That's what the Department of Justice tells them in their form, that you have to wait 10 days. Of course, Nobody's waiting 10 days. The average is between 14 and 18 days that people have to wait for the Department of Justice to approve their dealer record of sales documentation.
Just as an aside, I've heard from about 4 viewers, or more maybe, but I think at least 4 that I can think of that watch this show, that they've waited over 30 days.
Yes, and they have to start the draw system all over again.
Right, then they got to start from scratch again because it's more than 30 days, 32nd day or something, and now they want to do it all over again. Very frustrating.
And for many models of guns that people want to buy, like a Glock 19 or a Smith & Wesson Shield, 2 most popular concealable firearms that are available to Californians to buy, for many dealers, you're having to wait 4 months for the gun to come in.
I'm sorry, how long?
4 months.
Oh my gosh.
That's how large the backlog is on those things. The manufacturers are ramping up and making them as fast as they can, and they're shipping them not just to California, because we're not the only the ones that are buying guns across the nation. They're doing everything they can to fill the needs. And in some models, it's taken a very long time, and that's why people say, okay, what is that Ruger single shot 300 blackout?
They'll take whatever they can get. Yeah,
whatever they can get. But these people, and including the one instance where a councilman who had been anti-gun, never wanted a gun, never needed a gun, went in to buy a gun, said, well, you have to wait 10 days. What do you mean? And do a background check. And he says, what? 10 days? Don't you know who I am?
Right. I was just going to say, that's when do you know who I am? I'm a councilman. And they realize that it doesn't matter.
And many people are, I spoke to 2 dealers day before yesterday, and they said that 70% of the people that are coming in are new gun buyers. And the smart dealers are taking this opportunity to say, hey, listen, who did you vote for in the last election? These people who you voted for are the ones that are denying you the ability to buy this gun and take it home to protect your family and your home under circumstances where Antifa has declared that they're going to go out into the rural areas, that they're not going to remain in the urban areas, where civil unrest is happening in the unlikely of places, where coronavirus is spiking in weird and unintelligible places.
Sure.
And people are saying, they are now taking the gun issue, which used to be number 20 on their decision-making process as to who they're going to vote for, and putting it way up at the top. Now, we're going to take this opportunity to make sure that every gun dealer very soon has a list of all of the elected officials and the candidates that are running against them and where they stand on the Second Amendment. We are also going to take cards that we're asking dealers throughout the state of California to put into the boxes of any new guns that they sell, that give them information on how to get a hold of gun owners in California, how they can work to get information to learn how to fight to protect their right to protect their homes and their families by buying a gun. So we're going to do everything we can to inform them. We're going to point them to websites where they can get rudimentary training and certainly the 4 cardinal rules of safety. And then we're going to point them to places where they can actually go and get on the range training on a square range. And so we are doing everything we can to reach these people and to give them the information they need. It is massive. This could be the biggest turnaround in the state of California voting wise. Now, in California, it's always been something different that gave us a dynamic change in the voting patterns, from going from almost parity between Republicans and Democrats. And then the Democrats caught issues that came up, and they took a big foothold and they grew their majority, and a lot of Republicans left the state of California, and now it's below 24% of the population in California that are registered Republicans or conservatives. But that's changing. You're taking a lot of people who, by party registration, are Democrats, who are now denied their Second Amendment rights, and they're ticked off about it to the point where they're willing to do something about it. That's our task, is to reach these people and give them an opportunity to be involved. Yeah, I'm a very optimistic person. I think that the good Lord gives us opportunities, and we just have to take advantage of those opportunities. And I think this is one of those times. The very hopeful thing that I want to tell you is that many of the dealers are now contacting me and saying, you know what, Sam? We're getting a lot of people who were first-time buyers who are coming in to buy their second gun. Because the first time they went in, they were told you can only buy one gun of any kind a month. And they said, what?
And they're actually coming back to buy another one?
They're coming back to buy a second gun.
Well, hallelujah.
And some of them are learning. So they're coming in, and their wife is coming in, and their eligible family members are coming in to buy guns in order to get what it is they believe that they need. And they do need them. It isn't just a belief. It is a real, honest to goodness truth that they need these firearms to protect themselves. You know, when our government will not arrest the people that are not the peaceful protesters, that's our First Amendment right, but those that are inciting violence, and our government will not arrest these people and separate them from society for breaking the law in the way they do, we have much to be feared. Law enforcement, they're having difficult times responding even to 911 in the greater urban areas of the state of California. They're not taking the calls, you know, hey, somebody's got to come over here, somebody did this or that or the other. Well, is anybody in danger right now? No. Okay, well, we'll send somebody over as soon as we can. You know, don't call us again. You know, we got this on record, and somebody hopefully will come. And so there is an opportunity to take advantage of, you know, I hate to use the terminology of the colloquialisms of the day. These new people who are now woke to their second right.
Okay, I get it.
Yeah, yeah.
I get it. You know, it's yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. And
the fear that they have in their own homes is real. It's palpable.
Sure.
It is. You know, I had a call from one guy who said he was not a new gun buyer. He was a gun owner. He said, I had to sit on my front porch with my AR-15 over my lap as I watched the police a couple of blocks down the road organize, and the protesters are one block up, burning one of my neighbor's houses and starting to come down the block. This is not just a, you know, scaredy cat sort of a fear, conjuring up some sort of potential that never manifests itself. This is a true, honest to goodness, real life fear that has motivated some of these a lot millions of people to realize that they're their own first line of defense.
If it's any encouragement where that's concerned, and I'm certainly not encouraging people to take the law into their own hands, but the truth is that the police are a convenience. The Second Amendment is a necessity, because the police have always been, like it or not, whether they like it or not, they've always been somewhat of an after-the-fact agency, because they can't be all the place all the time. They can't protect you all the time. So quite often they show up after the deed is done and then try to figure out who did what to whom and go see if they can catch the person that did the wrong, whatever that may be. So the Second Amendment, your ability to defend yourself and your family, is a necessity. What's the old saying? The reason I carry a gun is I can't fit a cop in my pocket. Right. So, it's always been a necessity, but particularly in this environment, the Second Amendment has become such a necessity that a lot of these folks who didn't think it was a necessity before have now changed their minds, because look, the police are even less capable of being there when you need them to be there. A case in point, the couple in St. Louis the other day that was all over the news, standing in their front porch. Now, I've made some statements, particularly on Patreon, where I actually did a video today for Patreon patrons that talked about the training that these folks needed and where they could get it, and I went through that in a little podcast for them, where these folks obviously needed training, but training or not, I firmly believe the reason their house wasn't torched or damaged or destroyed or they weren't hurt is because they were able to stand on their front yard with an AR and a pistol. Mm-hmm. And the people can yell and scream and carry on and complain about it all they want to. Here's what I found interesting about that, and you may too, and I do find this encouraging. The minute I watched that video, I thought those people are going to get prosecuted for standing out in front of the yard defending their property. And sure enough, the local prosecutor, who is a loon, I've read some of her history, and she's a crazy leftist loon. She's decided to try to investigate them and prosecute them. Well, let me tell you something. Just about every federal and state politician known to man has come out and said, oh, no, 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 that was their right to do that. And so politically, there's all this backup now for this couple that came out to defend themselves. They were on Tucker Carlson's show the other day, and Tucker was agreeing with them. And so they've had all this wonderful press now, and a lot of folks backing them up. And I thought, well, that's incredibly encouraging. That's quite a turn of events. I mean, you're not seeing it on MSNBC or whatever, but nevertheless, it's quite a turn of events in my mind. And I'm hoping that these folks are not in any way prosecuted, because I think it bodes well for us, even here in the crazy state of California, where I'm not so sure that stepping out on your front porch with a gun is entirely legal. I mean, it depend on the situation, but thinking that, political figures might step up and support you around the country is pretty encouraging.
It truly is. And you said earlier that the analogy that you gave, we used to say that when you need a policeman now, they're 5 minutes away. Well, people are learning that when you need a policeman now, they're 15 or 20 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour away.
Or tomorrow.
Or tomorrow.
Or some cases tomorrow. I mean, some cases are so swamped that they're going to show up, unless they're going to show up tomorrow to take a report, because they can't. There's not enough officers. They just can only be in so many places at once. It's not that they don't want to be there. It's that they just don't have the wherewithal to do it, and now they want to take the funds away.
Yeah.
Well, I wrote down something you pointed out about back to AB 88, and I'm sorry, I'm rambling around here a little bit.
That's
I guess it's what happens. I'm an old guy, and I know you understand that.
I'm older.
Even though you're a young guy. How about that? You can send me a check for that later if you want.
I will.
You mentioned that the legislature pulls some pretty sneaky tricks now, because they have a supermajority, so they pretty much can do anything unopposed, and they can make rules and then break rules and so on. There's a lot of little rules in the legislature that I know you're well aware of because of your decades of working in that environment, and I'm not. Are there little tricks that we can play to delay some of these things or cause some of these bills not to pass, or are we completely unarmed in that regard?
Oh, Joel, you want me to give up some of the secrets?
No. I don't want you. I just want to know if they're there. I don't want to know what they are. I don't want you to. No, I don't want you to disarm yourself here.
There are things that we can do, and we have knowing the rules of the legislature are incredibly important, because every once in a while you're able to use the rules to defy them and to stop bad gun legislation. I don't remember if I mentioned it to you that, well, first of all, the rules are such that I remember when former Speaker Willie Brown of the Assembly, Willie Brown was the Speaker. He, in the middle year of the legislative session, the Constitution says that at midnight, the session ends on the last day of September or August, and that any bill that was not voted on at that point is dead, unless they put it on the inactive file or they somehow kept it alive so that it can be heard in the following year. But if it was on the floor and it was not addressed, then they died. So what he would do at 1 minute before midnight is he would order the sergeants to mechanically stop the clock. And then they would continue to work after midnight until they finished, and then he would invite the sergeants to start the clock again, and then he would resign the assembly. So recess it. So yeah, they'll do all kinds of. There's a book about that that's got all of the rules, and you have to know them in order to be able to avail yourselves of them. There was a bill by Senator Leno of San Francisco. Thankfully, he's termed out. He brought it up every year to ban gun shows at the Cow Palace. Mm-hmm. And we opposed it every year. And it went through like the legislature, like it did every year, like crap through a goose. Thankfully, Governor Schwarzenegger and Governor Brown vetoed it each time, or Governor Brown vetoed it each time that it came to his desk. But this last time, we thought, oh, there's a really good chance that it would be signed into law. So I communicated with a member of the Senate who was on the floor. Well, actually, he communicated with me and asked, what should we do? And I told him, ask for reconsideration on this bill that was voted on and passed. The rules say that any member of the Senate can ask for a consideration, whether it passes or whether it dies. And what happens is they get one more day. They cannot vote on it again for that day. They have to vote on it the next business day, the next session day. And this was the next to the last day of session. So we bought ourselves one day. And we happened to know that there was one state senator who had a family member that was, his wife was having significant medical issues, and he was literally flying back and forth from Los Angeles, come up, vote, jump back on a plane, go down, and so he couldn't vote on a lot of things. So we knew that this bill was passing by one vote, and we thought, this may give us an opportunity. We also realized that this senator who was going back and forth, he had a very favorite subject, and his subject was horse racing. He passed all of the consequential legislation on horse racing. That was his baby. And Senator Leno killed this senator's horse racing bill in this year, which was this senator's final year in the legislature. His marquee bill. This is the one he wanted to go on, and Senator Leno killed the bill. So there was a little bit of animosity there. So we said, how do we use this to our advantage? We know that the rules have delayed it for one day. They're going to have a session tomorrow. They will not bring this bill up for a vote without the senator here because they don't have enough votes. So we had some of our team who was down at the gate of the Senate, and my job was go and stand at the senator's door in his office to wait to see if he was there or if he flew back in time to cast final votes. We're talking at 11:45 at night. This is the end of a 2-year session, so you cannot stop the clock. All legislation dies. And my job was to have a conversation with the senator and say, Senator, why would you want to vote on a bill that is authored by the senator who killed your marquee horse racing bill? Wasn't policy, wasn't anything. I was just appealing to his, nature, his common sense nature.
His good sense of revenge.
Yes, his opportunity to stick it to this guy.
Yeah, right.
What happened is that we never had to do anything. The senator's plane arrived late. He walked on the Senate floor at 12:10. Everything had died. This bill had died, and we won for another year. So that issue is still, even now, and we're talking, that was 5 years ago, 6 years ago almost. That bill is still, they're still attempting to pass it in some way, shape, or form. Now by Senator Weiner, who's picked up the baton.
Picked up the gauntlet, yeah.
Yeah.
This is one of the reasons, by the way.
If you don't know the rules, you can't take advantage of an opportunity like that.
And if you're watching this is one of the reasons why it is important to support organizations like Gun Owners of California. Sam and his team have been playing the game and using the rules in our favor for a long time. Now, you can say to yourself, well, they're not winning very much. Well, actually, they do. Every year, there's a whole lot of bills that don't become law precisely because of this kind of stuff. And unfortunately, because we have a legislature with a supermajority, there are some that do, and there's some things that can't be stopped. But we would be in far worse shape if Sam and his team were not able to stop as many of them as they do.
There are 4 other major bills that we are fighting. There are a couple of other GVRO bills where, gun violence restraining order, where they want to give the ability to local district attorneys to issue a GVRO. They're expanding it from police officers and family members and school employees and co-workers and bosses who can ask for a GVRO. They want the DAs are saying, hey, where are we? Where are we? Or we, second redhead stepchildren or something. And we want to have the ability to issue GVROs also. And they're going to cram that through. And the whole GVRO issue is a disaster. It's insincere. We've talked about it on multiple shows.
Yeah, we have.
They're just adding another mammary gland to the bore.
And if you're a new gun owner, one of the things about these GVROs is really they're getting to the point now where it doesn't take very much for somebody who knows you have a gun or doesn't like you to start this process and make life miserable for you because you have a firearm. And maybe they don't agree with you politically, or maybe you happen to lose your temper one day when you were mowing your lawn, and you know, or whatever the case might be. These things are onerous. I mean, they really, really are. And the more they open up the thing for random people to issue these things, the worse it's going to get. So it's important for new gun owners to educate themselves beyond the fact that, wow, it was tough to buy a gun and my choices were limited. It's really super important that you get involved, if you're a brand new gun owner, that you get involved with Gun Owners of California and like organizations. I'll tell you that Gun Owners of California and CRPA work together hand in glove. They really do. So I urge you honestly to join both. But you should help out with these organizations and perhaps really take a hard look at some of these folks that are sitting in the legislature when it comes election time again. Anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Sam. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's okay. We also work very, very strongly with the National Rifle Association. Mm-hmm. They provide a lot of resources to our team that are so important to what we do. And Dan Reed, their lobbyist, is an outstanding young man, very bright, very energetic, and he gets it 100% true blue defender of the Second Amendment. So we have a great team. But what you just said is very important, especially to all of the new gun owners who might be on the left, who have never considered themselves to be gun owners and thought that gun control was a good thing, and all of these gun laws and universal background checks and all of that stuff. You tend to run with people of like mind. And I can see situations where somebody who is philosophically a liberal or even a radical, who realizes that they need to exercise their Second Amendment rights, that's more important than any political philosophy, and they go ahead and avail themselves of that, and they have conversations with some of their other friends who have not come to that point in time in their minds. Those people would say, what is wrong with you? You've had a whole life of being consistent. You must be mentally ill. You must have had some sort of a breakdown. You must be in danger, a danger to yourself or others. And then they might request a GVRO strictly because they believe that this person is no longer consistent. There must be something wrong going on here. So,
and what Sam's saying sounds like madness, and it is, but it's also extremely plausible. That's the problem. It doesn't matter. Your right to speak your mind and to worship as you wish to or choose not to wish to worship, the First Amendment rights are absolutely priceless. Your right to defend your life and the life of your loved ones is absolutely priceless. And it doesn't matter whether you're white or Latino, like my wife, or Filipino, like my son, or black, or Latino man, like Hispanic, like Sam, or it really doesn't, or whether you are LGBTQ, I want to say that without screwing it up, or whether you're straight, or whether you're male or female or trans. Your life is valuable, and you have the right to defend it. I think we get in this weird place where people feel like gun owners are homophobic, racist, crazy people who hate everyone and want guns to defend themselves against all of their neighbors, which is not the case. And so I think as we see more and more folks buying guns in these other, no matter how we separate ourselves politically or philosophically or whatever, we all have a right to speak our mind under the Constitution. It's a God-given right, or if you want to call it a natural right, if you don't believe in God, that's fine. And we all have a right to defend our own lives against people who would attack us, who are criminals or thugs or murderers or whatever. And my hope is that out of this chaos, that those two truths, if nothing else, will help us come together rather than pull us apart.
Joel, that is so well said. deplorables are no longer conservative, right-wing, Hicks, white, Bible-thumping wingers. Now, everybody is you cannot, everybody is starting to cling to their gun rights. Left, middle, right, radical, conservative, ultra-conservative, all the way across the board. You cannot call them these right-wing, white, religious nuts who are the gun owners. It is now everybody. You want to talk about a rainbow coalition? Gun ownership reflects the massive, probably the biggest coalition of diverse ideologies and political philosophies are now, people of those differences are now part of this gun owner universe who are exercising their fundamental enumerated right to defend themselves by utilizing the right to keep and bear arms. That means keep, that means have it in your home, and bearing, that means being able to carry it outside of your home. So,
What else are we facing in this
okay.
cockamamie state called the People's Socialist Republic of California?
SB 914 Portantino is especially unique to San Diego. We had the shooting where a young man who was under 21 years of age legally purchased a firearm and then used it in a shooting at a synagogue down in San Diego, or a school. I believe it was a synagogue.
I think it was a synagogue, yeah.
Yes. So what happened was, the way that he did it legally, present law says that anyone between the ages of 18 and less than 21 years of age, if they have a valid hunting license, they are allowed to purchase a long gun, a rifle or a shotgun. Now, what this guy did is he went out and he took the hunter safety course, he got a hunting license, and he went into a dealer, presented it with his identification and his hunting license, passed the dealer record of sales through the Department of Justice with those credentials. He got his gun and then went on and he committed his crime. What happened was, the legislature said, how can we prevent this from happening? What he did is he bought a hunting license that for the previous year, that in early, I believe it was early June, and the hunting license doesn't become effective. In other words, the hunting license doesn't give you the right to hunt until July 1st of that year. So although the hunting license was valid, the hunting season for that license didn't go into effect until July 1st. So the legislature said, we can't allow that to happen, because people can buy a license ahead of time that isn't valid, because the hunting season doesn't start for 4 weeks, and they can commit their crime. Well, the reality is, if the guy would have waited 4 more weeks, he could have committed the same thing, and nothing would have, he could not have been prevented by anybody. So that's a silly situation, but the legislature, they had to do something. So this bill, SB 914, defines what a valid hunting license is. This bill also makes it a little more cumbersome and difficult to loan firearms to minors. But the other, and probably the most important thing, is that it gives the Department of Justice the authority to raise fees for ammunition and precursor part purchases. So, yes.
And you got to explain what a precursor part is, because I have a feeling there's a great many folks who watch this show that don't know.
I just had a vetting conversation with Dan Reed from the National Rifle Association and Roy Griffith from CRPA. We are the 3 lobbyists for the organizations, and we just wanted to make sure that we understood what this bill does. Now, last year the legislature passed a bill that said that anybody who buys precursor parts, that means those are parts that can be used to assemble a firearm. You can only buy them from a licensed precursor part dealer. That means every gun dealer in the state of California automatically becomes a precursor part dealer, and then people who are not gun dealers can actually apply to become a precursor part dealer if they don't sell guns. Now, precursor parts are not defined. They're going to leave it up to the Attorney General and the Department of Justice to define what precursor parts. But let me tell you, I will bet it will include springs, pins, triggers, levers, sights, grips, screws, all of these things that you can buy from Brownells or your local gun dealer, but you can also go to Home Depot and buy comparable
Springs.
springs,
Right.
pins,
Yeah, you're right.
screws, all of these other things of wood in order to make your own grips and all of this kind of stuff. But what it did is the legislature passed this bill, but didn't give the ability for them to charge people a fee to get their background checks in order to be allowed to buy these precursor parts. And then these precursor parts, in this case, are going to have to be reported. The buyers are going to have to be reported to the Department of Justice. So,
so you think you've got a gun that's not on the list because you bought it a long time ago. And I'm just going down this path. Forgive me.
Yep.
And then you order some parts for your gun, and you have to have that gets reported to the California Department of Justice. And, you know, I suspect they're going to try to put two and two together. And, oh, by the way, in California, in order to buy ammunition, you have to go through a background check. And so, wait a minute, we didn't know he had a gun chambered in this particular cartridge. And, oh, he's buying parts for this. And now, you know, they've figured out that you have X gun.
Why do you need a firing pin for a Colt Peacemaker,
right,
when you don't have one on that's registered in your name?
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, there's all kinds of monkey business, and the legislature screwed up both on the ammunition and on the precursor parts of they didn't put in funding mechanisms. Except in the ammunition, they did. They said we will charge $1 for every ammunition purchase. Well, this vehicle is going to give them the ability to charge more than $1.
Oh my!
Of course, you can bet your bottom dollar. So that's a terrible bill. Is that
also SB 914 or is that a different one?
Yeah, all three of those provisions: the hunting license definition, the loaning of firearms to minors, and the authority to charge fees for ammunition and precursor part purchases are all contained in that bill. Now that bill has maybe some legal issues in that it's got multiple subjects in the same bill, and that is unconstitutional. So. But we'll see about that. The next bill, this one has nothing to do with guns. It's SB 1175 by Senator Stern. This bill bans the possession and importation of certain African animal trophies, even if they were taken legally. An obvious first step to ban trophy hunting of all species. This bill has also been sent over to the Senate. So, did
you say importation and possession? So if you've had it for 30 years,
it will be illegal for you to possess one of these iconic animal trophies: a lion, a leopard, elephant, a rhino. You know, we have, I would venture to guess, tens of thousands of Californians that have gone to Africa for safari.
Sure.
And for 100 years, I mean, you know, they've been doing that, and some have got magnificent trophy rooms as remembrances of this. When this bill came before the legislature, we had a permanent minister of Interior for one of the African nations who were affected by this, who testified by phone, because they don't allow us to go to the Capitol to testify. We have to do it by phone. And he presented that by doing that, you would diminish the number of hunters that will come from California, which would be devastating to the economy of many African nations. Number one, he pointed out, all of the iconic African species in states, countries in Africa that are allowed to be hunted are thriving, have growing populations that are very healthy. Number two, it would affect the economy in that the safari business is the only economy that exists in many communities throughout Africa. So the hunter outfitters, they hire trackers, they hire bearers, they hire skinners, they hire people to help with the safaris, to cook and to be a part of their business operation. And anything that you do to reduce the economy there is going to put these people out of work, and they can't go down to the local 7-Eleven to get a job, or a McDonald's, because there isn't one for 1,000 miles in any direction. And lastly, he pointed out that you're actually going to starve some people in African nations, because all of the taking of these iconic animals, we might not need it, and we cannot bring the meat to the United
No, the
States.
meat gets
That
used there.
the local communities use that as their food source, and sometimes the only meat food source they have, because it is illegal for the natives of these countries to hunt. It is either illegal, or it is so beyond their financial ability to hunt them in order to get the licenses. So those countries have interwoven safari hunting and the taking of animals to bring money from outside of the country in order to support the economy of these nations. He pointed that out, and the legislature as much as said, oh well, that's so sad, but we're sorry, we don't like killing animals, and we don't want these here. So if you have a trophy of one of these animals in your trophy room, it will become illegal.
Or if you'd like to have one.
Or you'd like to have one. Yeah, it would be illegal, and you will have to get rid of it, destroy it, get it out of the state. Something. For a while, there was conversation that they were going to put a bounty on people who tattle on people that they know who have these trophies, and that still might happen without a bounty for people who don't like safari hunters, and so this is a terrible bill. And of course, this is the first step to eliminating all trophy hunting, not only outside the country, but then inside the country, and then California. And then at that point, if you don't have hunting, there are a lot of guns that people aren't going to want to buy because they can't take a hunting gun for competition or something like that.
Well, I think it's not just trophy hunting. It seems to me that the legislature is actively trying to end hunting in California in general.
Yes. Yeah, and thereby reducing the need for people to have to purchase firearms. So the next bill, AB.
Oh, there's more.
Oh, there's two more.
But wait, there's more. Go ahead.
And if you buy that one, we have a 2-for-2 deal for you. AB 2362 by Assemblyman Al Maratsuchi. This bill allows the Department of Justice to make money while they drive gun dealers out of business. DOJ will be authorized to fine a dealer between $1,000 and $3,000 for every violation of the firearms regulations, no matter how minor. This bill is now over in the Senate. So right now, state law says that if we have a dealer who is either grossly ignoring or violating the rules and laws of being a dealer, the state of California can withdraw their license. That way you get rid of bad actors, bad dealers who will not, after they have been informed that they have messed up and will not clean up their act, the DOJ has the ability to get rid of them. Well, getting rid of them is, that was certainly an option that some people would say, yeah, well, they don't want gun dealers, why don't they do that? Well, with this bill, those dealers now become a cash cow for them, because as they go and they identify any issues, any minor issues, whether they didn't cross a T, dot an I, get proper identification, they have misplaced a firearm in their inventory, they don't have the signs that are up on the wall that they're required to have at X number size type with explaining the laws to anybody who comes into the gun store, any violation of the law, they will be able to be fined between $1,000 and $3,000. They keep their license, and then they get fined. So I envision a time when Attorney General Becerra goes to his inspectors and says, "Hey, we're having a cash crunch. Each of you need to find at least one violation at every inspection that you go and do, so that we can get these $1,000 to $3,000 checks coming to fund us for the things that we do." We know what they're trying to do. They ignore it. They lie. They don't. No, we're not trying to do that. We're trying to go after bad actors. You can already go after bad actors. You can get rid of bad actors. You're not trying to do that. Now you're trying to make money off of bad actors.
Well, and one of the problems too is that the older agents who would find a way to give you some slack and use officer discretion to let you slide if it's a minor thing, they're retiring or they're leaving. And so then the hiring process becomes the equivalent of making sure that you hire people who are like-minded so that they will go out and exercise the letter of the law and abuse that authority to the nth degree for the benefit of the state and the detriment of the firearms dealers and firearms owners in California.
That's correct. So this is a terrible bill. We know what they're trying to do, and we pulled the curtain back, and the wizard is Attorney General Becerra. So he's the one who's pulling all of the handles on this one. The last bill that is of significant concern to us, we're paying a lot of attention to, is AB 2847. This bill looked like it was going to die, but it was too juicy for them. This is by Assemblyman Chu. This bill changes the laws regarding the requirement for microstamping features to be included on any new handgun before being added to the roster of approved handguns. If any manufacturer successfully submits a new model handgun for testing and is added to the roster of approved handguns with the new requirements, 3 handgun models that do not have microstamping features will be removed from the roster.
Oh, wow.
Those that have been grandfathered in. Now, what they did to change the laws on microstamping, right now, one of the reasons that no manufacturer, well, one of the many reasons that they will not consider it, is that California law requires that a firearm imprint on a spent case in 2 locations a set of identifying marks that show make, model, and serial number of the gun. Now, the firing pin is the one that makes most sense if you even believe in this thing. So they engrave on the tip of the firing pin characters that are 1/26 the thickness of a human hair, so that when the firing pin hits the primer, it impresses that information. Well, the law said that something in some other place on the case, that information had to be impressed. Well, National Shooting Sports Foundation went to court in the state of California at the Superior Court. They went to the appellate court, went to the Supreme Court. After the appellate court said, no, there's nothing wrong with that. It's, even though it's impossible for that to be accomplished, it's still a valid law. And Supreme Court in California heard the case and said, you know what? You can't dismiss the case. You have to hear their arguments, and you have to hold the case. So we've gone back, and there's still work to do on that thing. They envision engraving the markings on the inside of a chamber or on the breech face, but there's not significant enough pressure for those numbers to impress on the case. And then we learn, they used all of this justification for why microstamping is amazing and stuff like that, and how it's so reliable and that. And that's a load of sheep dip. Your average Glock firing pin is not a round firing pin. It's a trapezoidal or almost triangular firing pin. That when, in many cases, if you look at your spent cases on my Glock 19, the firing pin impression is an impression, and then it's smeared. So when they tested certain Glocks, it impressed the numbers and then smeared them. You couldn't tell what they were, or they were partially, you got a false reading. We also learned through high-speed photography, something that even manufacturers didn't know, that in virtually every case, a firing pin doesn't strike the primer once. It literally bounces and hits it multiple times.
Oh.
The reason we realized that is when the our folks were testing this, they said, how come there are 2 and 3 impressions that are muddling the vision on it? So then they used high-speed photography, and they realized that firing pins literally bounce on a firing pin multiple times at incredible high speed.
Wow.
So microstamping technology was not good. So Assemblyman Chu said, okay, so we're going to remove the requirement for marking it on 2 places, and we're just going to do it on 1. And it doesn't matter that anybody who can buy a gun with a microstamping fire pin can take it out, throw it away, put in a 1 with no markings and have not broken the law, or take that firing pin and take their wife's
fingernail file
and scrape them off.
Gone.
1/26 the thickness of a hair.
Right.
So and then put it back in, and they will not have broken the law. And any criminal who buys a gun and I mean, they're smart. they're stupid because they're criminals, but they're smart and are able to defeat this kind of technology.
None of this stuff is meant to impede criminals' behavior at all. It's meant
That's correct.
to harm
That's
law-abiding
so,
citizens.
If a manufacturer were to submit a gun with microstamping, something that no manufacturer in the world is interested in using that technology in their firearms for a variety of reasons, mainly because if they make some sort of a mistake with one gun and it is used in an accident or a commission of a crime,
they get sued into oblivion.
Yeah, they'll sue them to oblivion. And the authors of this bill, they said, oh, it only costs $1.50 to install one of these firing pins on one of these guns, and it's only because they're ignorant of the manufacturing process. You know, they don't know that at a manufacturer they get slides that make it down the process, and they insert all of the parts, and then they get a receiver, and then they fit the slide to the receiver, oftentimes with a complete slide. Or some of the components already in there. What would have to happen is they would have to get the slide, do the work, get the receiver, get the matching, the serial number on that, take a blank firing pin, have it engraved, insert that, and then verify that they match. That's going to double the cost under any stretch of the imagination.
At least double the cost, yeah. At least double the cost.
So there's all kinds of issues. That's an insidious bill. And the fact, that if one, this is why I don't think he's serious, knowing that for every one gun that is accepted, they're going to take the oldest guns on the list that do not have markings on them and remove 3 of them. And I'll bet you that the first 3 guns that are going to go are going to be some models of 1911s. And that way we'll go from having 775 guns on the approved roster at for everyone that's we're going to reach a point of diminishing returns to where we're going to have, just
so you can sit down and do the math. You're going to have a handful of guns available, and that's it.
That's right. So it's
so ridiculous. Go down and buy a gun now, except that you can't because right.
Yeah. Those are the key bills that we are fighting in the legislature. We're already looking at the probability that we are going to have to file lawsuits on some of them.
Mm-hmm.
We're working with all of the partners. And we are actively trying to raise money at this time when we can't have dinners. 50% of the revenue that gun owners in California makes comes from our fundraising dinners, and we're not allowed to have any of them. Our First Amendment right to assemble is being violated. Well, unless we had a protest, which we are considering having, a protest at a location where people will have signs protesting their support for the Second Amendment.
Oh, invite me.
Dinner will be provided.
As long as there's dinner, if there's food. Right.
Yeah, and we'll have some raffles and auctions and stuff like that. So we're actively looking at how we need to fundraise in order to continue to work in the legislature. We have an election coming up. We have to take this list of good candidates and bad candidates and send them to every gun dealer in the state of California, every gun range in the state of California, and to every gun owner that we have on any of our lists so that they can share it with people. We got to put them on social media so that people will know who it is that is denying them their rights. We have got to continue to fight for the legal side, and people say, well, that's gone. No, it's not. Yes, the Supreme Court decided not to take any of the 10 cases that they were considering. Why? Most likely because the 4 judges that would vote yesterday to take one of those cases realized that one of the judges who would be their 5th vote is not a reliable vote on a Second Amendment issue. And
let me guess, that would be Chief Justice Roberts.
Ding, 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 ding. And so instead of having a devastating situation that they accept the case and Justice Roberts goes with the left, it would set the Second Amendment back for decades. So it's too important an issue to 4 of those judges, and they pointed it out in their responses to the actions of the Supreme Court. There are going to be other opportunities. We have to continue to send cases to the Supreme Court that they will be ready to take, and hopefully this points out to the importance for the reelection of President Donald Trump, who will have probably 2 opportunities, maybe even 3 opportunities to appoint Supreme Court justices. And if he does that and we have a 5-vote majority, that's when we will crest Mount Everest, and we will be on the downhill climb, fighting and running down that hill to restore the Second Amendment to what it's supposed to be, with the complete backing of the United States Supreme Court. So I'm hopeful for, but that's the reason people have to stay involved and continue to support us, because even though we can't gather, we can't raise money at dinners and things like that, all of these things are still going on, and we need people's support.
Sam mentioned twice this evil, terrible organization, this three-letter organization called NRA, the National Rifle Association. They take a lot of heat, primarily because of Wayne LaPierre's $20,000 suits and his exorbitant salary and so on. Look, I get it. I really do. And I'm of the opinion that Wayne should retire. I'm still a life member of the NRA, and I still support NRA because, and here's why. Sam has now mentioned, I think twice, the fact that NRA has a full-time lobbyist in the state of California.
The NRA spends millions of dollars in the state of California. All of the lawsuits that made it to the Supreme Court, most of them that made it to the Supreme Court that were tossed aside, were funded by the National Rifle.
They did so with NRA backing, right?
Yeah, and here in California, multiple lawsuits that are in the process right now are funded by the National Rifle Association. Our lobbying team here is probably the best team of any lobbying organization that works up here, and we fight under the worst of conditions of anybody else. We fight an implacable enemy, and we have to do it with a smile, and we have to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. But lobbying, elections, lawsuits, NRA, CRPA, Gun Owners of California, we are working together, doing the best things that we each do differently, and that makes us stronger. Yeah, you have the National Rifle Association, the largest gun organization in America. Gun Owners of America is starting to nip at its heels with nearly 3 million members.
Right.
They have the largest membership in the state of California. There's no secret. It's hundreds of thousands of Californians are members of the National Rifle Association, and they raise resources, and they don't send them all outside of California. They spend them here. I'm here to tell you that. They're the elephant in the room. The California Rifle and Pistol Association has grown to be a very effective organization on local levels. They have continuously had a lobbying presence in Sacramento. They have stepped that up, and now they've got a team of lobbyists that help us, and they are very good. Roy Griffith is an outstanding law enforcement background, fish and game warden background, captain of the hunter education unit of the Department of Fish and Game before he retired and came to work for CRPA. Chuck Michelle, incredible lawyer, and I don't know where we would be without him. And it takes a combination of NRA providing the resources that we can utilize in lawsuits, and you know, it's the stuff that people don't see. And then Gun Owners of California, we are tend to be more political. We came out of fighting in elections. That was our expertise. And then we grew to be very experienced in lobbying by necessity. And now we have come alongside NRA and CRPA as being an integral part of the legal side in funding and identifying other organizations who would support their lawsuits with friend of the court briefs. And as I mentioned in a previous show, how do we know that those things are so important? Well, when you have Supreme Court justices who quote your briefs, you know,
yeah, right.
them.
Yeah.
So they are very important. Please, we have a wheel with 3 spokes. Don't cut out any of those spokes. Support them all. We need your support. There's no secret about it. The Gun Owners of California, we're experiencing difficult times like everybody else is. But we need your support in order to continue to be one of that very critical, important spokes in that 3-spoke wheel. And we are moving the ball forward. We are gaining, and we will continue to gain if we can continue to work together from our strengths.
Thank you, Sam, very much for your friendship and for your hard work. And thank you very much for coming on the show. I really do appreciate it. We'll do it again soon. And please don't wait for me. If there's something that we need to talk about, let me know. Because as you know, I don't do YouTube full time. This is something I do because I'm passionate about it. I actually have a job. I actually work. So I can't keep an eye on it like you do. This is your full-time thing, and you have your fingers on the pulse. I don't. So help me out.
Can I mention one last thing?
Of course, absolutely. Please do.
On July 17th and 18th, we are actually going to have a fundraising event. It's being held at Comanche Hills Hunting Preserve in Ione, California. So anybody in Northern California, or if you're from Southern California and you want to participate in one of the most fun sporting clay shoots you can imagine, give us a call at 916-984-1400 or go to our website. We call it the Great Guns Giveaway. We're giving away in Lewis class scoring 4 Beretta A400 Explorers, the Smurf guns, the blue ones that are set up for sporting clays with the kickoff buttstock, no recoil. We have a women's prize. Top woman will receive a A400 Explorer in 20 gauge, and then we have a raffle going on for a multi-competition Beretta A400 that is just beautiful. Each of those shotguns is worth well over $1,400. And we're going to have games at five stand, super clays, trap, skeet, different games where people can try to win guns. We're going to try to give away nothing but guns. Yeah, we might have a couple of baskets and some cases of ammunition and stuff like that, but we're going to try to give away prizes for every event, a gun. And then we'll have a raffle and an auction, and we want to use guns. So if you want information, it's going to be a great time. If you want to bring a trailer, make arrangements, give a call to Comanche Hills Hunting Preserve. Let them know that you want to come up there, Google them, get their phone number, reserve a spot. You can bring a trailer and stay overnight. You can shoot on Friday is European, which means that they will squad you with 4 people to shoot the main event, the sporting clays. And then on Saturday, it's squatted. You can bring your own team of shooters, and you can do the event with the team. In both days, there will be some of the fun events. And then on Saturday night, we're going to have a awards banquet and dinner and raffle and auction to raise some money so we can continue to do what we do.
What were the dates again, Sam?
July 17th, Friday, and 18th, Saturday.
So this month?
This month. Now, we can take a lot of shooters, but it might be limited. But it's so much fun. It is an unbelievably good time with people who believe like you do, who will actually be shooting guns alongside you. And you know what? There's nothing like razzing your friends when they miss a sporting clay shot. That's just fun. This is unlike golf, where you can't talk when somebody's swinging. You can haggle and niggle these people while they're up there shooting all day long and have fun while doing it. So
yeah, I love it.
It's a beautiful thing. So
Thank you, Sam.
Everybody. Thank
you, Sam. I appreciate it. By the way, if you have a link on your website to that, Sam, if you could send it to me, or just let me know where it is, I'll go ahead and post that.
Under events, our line under events or calendar, and then events, and then you can find it on the calendar.
I'll find it, and I'll put it in the description for you, so if you're watching, you can find it, and then you'll be able to get there.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Sam, very much. I do appreciate it. Have a great week.
God bless you. You too. And happy birthday, America.
Thank you again very much for watching this entire interview. If you stuck with us through the whole thing, you are truly a Second Amendment supporter, and I'm very grateful for you. And thank you very much again for all of your support of GunGuyTV. Have a wonderful week, and wherever you go, whatever you do, please be safe.